The sun was setting as Jenny, Mark, Lisa, and Tom set up their tents in the heart of the dense forest. It was their annual camping trip, a tradition that had bonded them since college. This year, they had chosen an unmarked spot deep within the woods, miles from civilization, to escape the hustle of their daily lives. As the evening shadows grew longer, they sat around a crackling campfire, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. The tranquility of the forest was comforting, the kind of peace they had all been craving. "I heard these woods are haunted," Tom said with a grin, his face lit by the flickering flames. "Oh, come on," Lisa replied, rolling her eyes. "Every forest has some ghost story." "No, really?" Tom insisted. "They say the trees here whisper secrets at night, revealing things about your past that you've tried to forget." Mark chuckled. "Sounds like you've been watching too many horror movies." As night fell and the fire dwindled to embers, they retreated to their tents, tired from the day's hike. The forest was silent except for the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. Jenny was the last to fall asleep, feeling a strange sense of unease. Sometime after midnight, Jenny woke to a soft, almost inaudible whispering. She sat up, listening intently. The whispers seemed to be coming from the trees surrounding their campsite. She unzipped her tent and stepped out, her breath visible in the cool night air. "Jenny," the trees seemed to sigh, their voices melding into one. Her heart pounded as she strained to hear. "Who's there?" she called out softly. "Jenny, remember." The whispers continued, growing louder, more insistent. "Remember what you did." She felt a chill run down her spine. It had been years since she'd thought about that night, the accident she had tried so hard to forget. The guilt she had buried deep within her was now resurfacing, brought to life by the eerie voices. Across the campsite, Mark and Lisa emerged from their tents, drawn by the whispers. "Do you hear that?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling. "Yeah," Mark replied, looking around nervously. "It's like the trees are talking." Tom joined them, his face pale. "This isn't funny. Let's pack up and leave." But as they started to gather their things, the forest seemed to close in around them. The trees, tall and imposing, seemed to shift and move, their branches stretching towards the campers. "We need to get out of here," Mark said urgently. They started to walk towards the path they had come from, but no matter which direction they turned, the trees blocked their way, the whispers growing louder, more frantic. The air was thick with a sense of impending doom. "Lisa, remember," the trees hissed. "Remember that night with Jack?" Lisa's eyes widened in terror. "How do they know about that?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "I never told anyone." "Mark, you can't hide." The voices continued. "You can't hide from what you did." Mark's face went white. "No, this isn't real. It's not possible." Tom was shaking. "We have to keep moving. There has to be a way out." But the forest had become a labyrinth, each path leading them back to the center, to the whispering trees that knew their darkest secrets. The whispers turned to screams, each revelation more painful than the last. "Tom, you think you're innocent," the trees shrieked. "But you can't escape your past." Tom fell to his knees, covering his ears, trying to block out the voices. "Stop it. Please, stop." The screams echoed through the forest, blending with the campers' cries of despair. The trees loomed over them, their branches like skeletal hands reaching for their souls. Hours passed in a blur of terror and confusion. Exhausted and broken, the campers finally stumbled upon a clearing, the first rays of dawn piercing through the darkness. They collapsed, unable to comprehend what had happened. When they finally found their way back to civilization, they were changed. The forest had revealed their deepest fears, their hidden sins, and they knew they could never escape its grasp. The whispering trees had taken something from them, something they could never reclaim. Years later, they still heard the whispers in their dreams, a constant reminder of the secrets they had tried to hide. The forest had become a part of them, and they would carry its haunting memory for the rest of their lives. Tyler had been planning this camping trip for months. He needed a break from his stressful job and the constant buzz of city life. The idea of spending a weekend alone in the serene, untouched wilderness sounded like heaven. He had chosen a spot deep in the forest, far from any marked trails, to ensure he wouldn't be disturbed. He arrived at the secluded clearing just before sunset. The place was perfect, surrounded by tall pines, with a crystal-clear stream nearby. He set up his tent, gathered wood for a campfire, and settled in for the night, feeling a sense of peace wash over him as the sun dipped below the horizon. As darkness fell, Tyler built a fire and cooked a simple meal. The quiet of the forest was interrupted only by the crackling of the fire and the occasional rustle of leaves. After eating, he leaned back against a log, enjoying the symphony of crickets and the gentle breeze. It was exactly what he had hoped for. Hours later, with the fire reduced to glowing embers, Tyler crawled into his tent and fell asleep almost immediately. He woke suddenly in the middle of the night, a strange sound piercing the silence of the forest. It was a distant, rhythmic noise, like someone chopping wood. He checked his watch, 2:30 a.m. Who will be chopping wood at this hour? He listened for a few moments, his mind still foggy with sleep, before deciding it was probably just the wind or an animal. He rolled over and tried to go back to sleep. But the noise persisted, growing louder and more distinct. Finally, curiosity got the better of him. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped out of the tent. The night was pitch black, the trees around him casting long, ominous shadows. He followed the sound, walking slowly and carefully through the forest, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the darkness. After a few minutes, he saw a faint light flickering in the distance. As he got closer, he realized it was another campfire. Relief washed over him. He wasn't the only one out here. Maybe someone else had chosen this spot for the same reason he had, to escape. But as he approached, he saw a figure standing by the fire, hunched over something on the ground. "Hello," Tyler called out, hoping not to startle the person. The figure straightened up and turned to face him. It was a man, his face illuminated by the firelight. He looked ordinary enough, but there was something unsettling about his expression, cold, emotionless. "Didn't mean to intrude," Tyler said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I heard chopping and wanted to make sure everything was okay." The man didn't respond immediately. He just stared at Tyler, his eyes dark and unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "Everything's fine. Just preparing some firewood." Tyler nodded, feeling a little uneasy. "All right, then. I'll leave you to it." As he turned to walk away, something caught his eye, something on the ground by the man's feet. It was a pile of what looked like camping gear. He glanced at the man's campsite and noticed there were no tents or other signs of anyone else camping there. Just the fire, the man, and the pile of gear. "Where's your tent?" Tyler asked, trying to sound casual. The man's eyes narrowed. "I don't need one. I prefer sleeping under the stars." Tyler nodded again, feeling the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. "Well, have a good night," he said, quickly turning and heading back towards his own campsite. As he walked away, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. He picked up his pace, the beam of his flashlight trembling slightly in his hand. When he finally reached his tent, he quickly climbed inside and zipped it up, his heart pounding. He lay there, wide awake, listening to the night sounds. The chopping had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. After what felt like hours, he finally drifted off to sleep, exhaustion overcoming his fear. In the morning, Tyler woke up early, eager to pack up and leave. The uneasy feeling from the night before still lingered. He quickly gathered his things and loaded his backpack. As he was about to leave, he heard a noise, footsteps approaching his campsite. His heart raced as the figure of the man from the night before emerged from the trees. "Morning," the man said, his voice eerily cheerful. "Morning," Tyler replied, forcing a smile. "I was just about to head out." The man nodded, but his eyes never left Tyler. "Mind if I join you?" It's a long walk back to civilization. Tyler's mind raced. He didn't want to spend another minute with this stranger, but he also didn't want to provoke him. "Sure," he said reluctantly. "Let's go." They walked in silence, the forest around them feeling more oppressive with each step. Tyler tried to keep his distance, but the man stayed close, his presence unsettling. After what felt like an eternity, they finally reached the edge of the forest. Tyler could see his car parked in the distance, a wave of relief washing over him. "Thanks for the company," Tyler said, trying to sound polite. "Take care." The man smiled, a cold, empty smile. "You too." Tyler hurried to his car, not looking back until he was safely inside. As he drove away, he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the man standing at the edge of the forest, watching him leave. He never went camping alone again, the memory of that encounter haunting him for the rest of his life. Every time he heard a sound in the night, he would remember the man's cold eyes and wonder if he had truly escaped. Jake loved the solitude of camping alone. It was his way of escaping the pressures of his hectic life. This time, he chose a remote location deep in the wilderness, miles away from any known trails or campsites. It was the perfect spot to clear his mind and enjoy nature's untouched beauty. He arrived just before dusk, quickly setting up his tent and gathering wood for a campfire. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest around him came alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures. Jake cooked his dinner over the fire, the crackling flames providing a comforting glow in the encroaching darkness. After eating, he leaned back against a log, sipping a cup of tea and watching the stars emerge. The isolation was peaceful, lulling him into a sense of security. When the fire had burned down to embers, he doused it with water, crawled into his tent, and fell into a deep sleep. In the middle of the night, Jake stirred, sensing something was off. The forest was deathly quiet, devoid of the usual nighttime symphony. He felt an inexplicable chill run down his spine, but dismissed it as a figment of his imagination. Eventually, he drifted back to sleep. When he woke up the next morning, the first rays of sunlight were filtering through the trees. Jake stretched and unzipped his tent, ready to start his day. But as he stepped out, he froze. There, on the makeshift table he had set up the previous night, was a cup of tea. Steam no longer rose from it, but the liquid was still warm, and it had clearly been partially drunk. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He was miles from civilization, with no one knowing his exact location. There were no signs of disturbance, no footprints, no broken branches, nothing to indicate that someone had been there. His mind raced through the possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. Determined to stay rational, Jake decided to search the immediate area. He combed through the woods, calling out, hoping for an explanation that wouldn't be as sinister as the creeping dread he felt. But the forest remained silent, and he found no evidence of another person's presence. Returning to his campsite, Jake tried to shake off the unease. He forced himself to eat breakfast, though his appetite was gone. As he sipped his own freshly made tea, he couldn't help but glance nervously around, half expecting to see someone or something watching him from the shadows. By noon, Jake decided it was best to pack up and leave. The sense of being watched had only grown stronger, and he couldn't shake the feeling of an unseen presence. He quickly dismantled his tent and gathered his gear, his movements hurried and frantic. Just as he was about to leave, Jake noticed something peculiar on the table where the mysterious cup of tea had been left. A single sheet of paper lay there, something he hadn't noticed earlier. With trembling hands, he picked it up and read the hastily scrawled note. "Enjoyed the tea. Let's do it again sometime." Panic surged through him as he scanned the surrounding trees, desperately searching for the author of the note. But the forest remained still and silent, mocking his fear. Without a second thought, Jake hoisted his backpack and started the long trek back to his car, casting frequent glances over his shoulder. The journey felt endless, every rustle of leaves and snap of a twig sending jolts of fear through him. When he finally reached his car, he threw his gear into the back and sped down the dirt road, not daring to look back. It was only when he reached the safety of his home that he allowed himself to breathe. But the relief was short-lived. That night, as he settled into bed, he found another note on his pillow. Until next time, Jake never went camping alone again. The sense of being watched followed him, the memory of that eerie cup of tea, and the unseen visitor who left no trace but fear, haunting his every waking moment.